My name is Penelope Hsu. I am a physician. I'm a pediatrician. I'm also a certified life coach, and I'm also an actor. And I know that that makes no actual sense. It doesn't make any sense if you buy into the myth that we were all taught about what we were supposed to do when we grow up and what our lives are supposed to look like. And I wanted to tell my story today as an example of what can happen to your mental health, both best case scenario and worst case scenario, when those myths collide entirely with who you actually are. So I've always been an artist and a scientist. I started dance lessons when I was 4. I got to play Carnegie Hall as a musician while I was at a science and math high school here in the city. I choreographed dance routines for our API Heritage Weeks while I was a psych and bio double major pre-med at the University of Pennsylvania. And I never questioned any of that. That all made perfect sense, right? I totally bought into the myth that we should practice guitar, clarinet, piano, dance for 5 hours a day, but never consider performing an actual career, right? I never doubted the myth that there are really only 5 career choices for us first generation born Asian Americans. MD, JD, PhD, MBA, or maybe IT. Right? I threw that in there just for you.
Thank you.
And I never questioned the myth that my sole purpose in life, the only thing I was tasked to do, was to honor my parents' sacrifice and become successful and stable. And growing up, these myths made total sense to me. I mean, they gave me a path, a direction, a focus, and I followed them blindly without question, without any dissonance, until I got to medical school and residency. Because then I was working 100-hour weeks, 6 figures in debt, and I had to focus. But while my classmates wanted to go and spend extra time in the microbiology lab, I wanted to go to the dance studio and choreograph something. And while my colleagues were getting more and more excited about taking care of patients independently, I wanted to run off to LA and audition for TV shows with my friends. So this was the first time that these myths that I grew up believing to be true about who I was, what I was supposed to enjoy, what my life was supposed to look like, were ringing completely false. And I did not know what to do about that. And I also didn't have anyone to talk to about it because I also bought into the myth that we don't talk about such things in our family. You don't talk about doubt or confusion. Who cares what your personal interests are when you have these myths to follow? So I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And what that started to do to my own mental health was it started to make me think that there must be something wrong with me, right? Because we've all heard some version of the myth that our parents walked through 12 miles in the snow without any shoes to get to school or to work to give us what? A better life, right? So how selfish and ungrateful was I to dismiss and disrespect that sacrifice, to want to run off to La La Land and be an actor? How stupid can I be? How dumb of an idea to think that I could be an artist when I should be grateful and humble to be allowed to participate in the world's most noble profession of saving lives, and in my case, saving children's lives. Oh yes, there had to be something wrong with me. And what that started to do to my mental health is it started to make me hate myself. I hated the fact that I was no longer the perfect little Asian girl, and I couldn't fit myself back into those myths. But I also hated the fact that I lacked the courage to leave medicine to pursue what I kept saying were my dreams, so I was a complete coward and a fraud. And ultimately, I realized that every day I was just an absolute failure. I was failing to live up to my parents' expectations. I was failing to live up to my own. I lacked courage, I lacked conviction, I was selfish and I was ungrateful. I was so full of self-hate and confusion and isolation and desperation that one night, after a really miserable shift in the ER, I found myself driving to the foot of a bridge. Because I felt like living like this, knowing that I would never measure up, I would never be good enough, I would never be strong enough, I was failing everyone in every way, every day. Well, that was a form of death anyway, so why the hell not? Now, I didn't jump, thankfully, obviously. But when I came back from that brink, I had a decision to make. And the decision I made, Andrea, you may want to cover Amelia's ears. My 4-year-old niece is in the house. The decision that I made, quite frankly, was to f these myths. I was raised to be too damn smart to not be able to figure this shit out. And I've spent my entire adult life figuring out how to do both, how to build what I call my and, how to fulfill my own passions and dreams, as well as honor my parents. And it has not been easy. And I've definitely gotten some weird looks from people, including my family, but I've also lived an extraordinary life. I've been on national commercials. I literally have saved dying children. I'm standing in front of you now. And most importantly, I have never again looked at a bridge. So having survived that, and having somewhat figured it out, I have made it my mission to help other Asian Americans and other people who might be struggling through this. And that meant me learning how to help people in a way that went beyond just writing a prescription or ordering a test. So I became a certified life coach. Now, what the fuck is that? I know. So a life coach is different than a therapist, and that is different than a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist goes to medical school, they do a residency, and they can use medication to balance out your neurochemistry. Just like a diabetic needs medication to balance out their insulin and glucose levels, you may need medication to balance out your dopamine and serotonin levels. We would never call a diabetic weak, or that they have a character flaw, or all they need is a positive attitude to adjust their glucose levels. Then why the hell do we buy into the myth in our Asian culture and society at large that things like depression, anxiety, OCD, and all these other neurochemical imbalances are weakness, are personal flaws? It is a myth that is completely false, that needs to be debunked, and psychiatry can help you get back to balance. Therapy provides a safe, confidential, non-judgmental space for you to process all of the things that, again, our Asian culture and society at large says that we should never talk about. You can't talk about your family skeletons at home because that would be disgraceful and bring us dishonor. You can't talk about the fact that you didn't get the promotion and now your confidence is crushed, or that a heartbreak has ruined your life, because that would look weak. But in therapy, you can. In therapy, you can lament. You can grieve, you can rage, you can scream and cry and process all of the things that have happened to you to get you back to a place of neutrality. And then there's coaching. Coaching first presumes that the first two steps are already done, so you are balanced, you process, and you start to work with a coach when you are ready to dream and when you're ready to build. And it is amazing. I have seen clients do amazing things when they finally tap into their own truth, their own strength and wisdom, couple it with our cultural values without getting crushed by the idea of what it has to look like. It is possible. It is absolutely possible to have filial piety and still honor your own abilities and talents. It is possible to bring honor and respect to your family while still being true to yourself. It is possible to have your and. I'm living proof that it's possible, and I do this every day with my clients, and I love it. It is so fun. Because I firmly believe that building and creating an and, destroying the myths of what we can and cannot talk about, what mental health should and shouldn't look like, what our lives should and shouldn't look like. If we can crush all of that and create who we really are and what we are meant to do, I do think we can achieve mental health as Asian Americans. Thanks.